Last Tuesday, I was over at my friend Sarah's place around 11 p.m. She was standing in her kitchen, still in her pajamas, and the room smelled like a mix of cold Thai food and that specific, sharp scent of stress sweat. She looked like she was on the verge of a major breakthrough, or total breakdown. Her phone was glowing with an aggressive blue light, and every few seconds it would chime with a cheerful, melodic ping. I asked her if she was doing okay, and she just pointed at the screen with a trembling finger. Her AI productivity assistant was congratulating her on finishing her workday, but then it immediately listed 17 optimization opportunities she could still fit in before bed. It was calmly suggesting a quick height workout, a meal prep session for Wednesday, and clearing 3 low-priority emails to maximize her daily efficiency. Sarah just started sobbing. Not because she was tired, but because the algorithm was technically right. She could do those things. The machine had calculated her potential, and it simply didn't have a setting for enough. What struck me wasn't just Sarah's exhaustion, it was the way she looked at her phone, with a mix of reverence and pure terror. She felt like she was failing a boss that lived in her pocket, a digital overseer that never needs to eat, sleep, or take a breath. It made me realize we've entered a strange new era where our tools aren't just helping us work, they're redesigning what it means to be a person. We're faster, we're more optimized, and we're completing tasks 40% more efficiently than ever before. But as I watched Sarah stare at that glowing screen in the dark, I had to wonder, if we're finally winning the war against inefficiency, why does it feel like we're losing our lives in the process?
That image of Sarah in her kitchen, with the glowing phone, it's just so powerful. It really is the perfect anchor for this whole conversation.
It is, isn't it? It feels so immediate.
It's the emotional core of this entire moment we're living through. I mean, we all see the headlines, right? The productivity revolution. And if you look at the big macroeconomic charts, everything's pointing up. But then you zoom in on the individual, on the person actually holding that phone, and it feels less like a revolution and more like a trap closing in.
It absolutely feels like a trap. It's this strange sensation of willingly handing over the keys to your own life, your own autonomy, to a calculator that just has no concept of what it means to be tired.
And can't be reasoned with.
Exactly. And the most maddening part, the thing that I think really got to Sarah, is that the numbers back the machine up. The success metrics are all on its side. When you look at the data we have on this whole AI productivity trap, the paradox is just, it's staring you right in the face.
It's a huge contradiction.
A huge one. Workers who use these AI tools, they are, in fact, finishing their tasks about 40% faster. Now, in any sane, logical world, that should mean we're all working 40% less. We should all be taking longer lunches or, going home early.
That was the dream, wasn't it? That was the whole Keynesian promise.
Yeah.
Technology makes us more efficient, which leads to more leisure. That's what we were sold.
That's what we were sold. But the data, the reality of it, it shows the complete opposite happening.
It's an inverse relationship, unbelievably.
Right. The research shows that these same optimized people are working longer hours, they're sleeping less, and they are reporting stress levels that are just completely off the charts compared to their peers who haven't jumped on this bandwagon yet.
So we're at this collision point.
Yes, that's the perfect word for it, a collision. On one side, you have this beautiful dream of infinite algorithmic efficiency, the machine whispering in your ear, you can always do one more thing, just one more. And on the other side, you have the messy, biological, very real limits of being a human being.
And that collision is exactly where we need to focus today. So much of the talk around AI gets bogged down in the technical side of things. The model parameters, the chip architecture, all of that.
Speeds and feeds.
The speeds and feeds. But based on all the research we've looked at for this deep dive, and it covers everything from global manufacturing strategies to these dense regulatory frameworks, we have to look at the human side of that equation. What is the cost of that efficiency? And I think this is crucial. We have to widen the lens. We need to look beyond our own backyard and see how different cultures, different systems are trying to answer that same question you ended with. Because the Sarah model, this story of individual burnout driven by self-optimization, that is not the only way this story is unfolding.
And that's the pivot, right? That's what makes this so fascinating. We are so stuck in our own Western bubble of personal assistance and productivity apps and, life hacks. We forget that there is this enormous industrial world out there where AI is being used for something completely different.
A different purpose entirely.
A different purpose. But before we get to that global picture, I want to stay with Sarah for just a minute more. I really want to diagnose the actual mechanism of this trap. In one of the articles we read, when your phone becomes your boss, the author uses this phrase, optimization opportunities.
Oh, that's classic corporate jargon.
It is, isn't it? It sounds so harmless, so benign. But when that phrase is invading your kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, it's genuinely terrifying.
Well, it signals a fundamental shift in what a tool is. I mean, think about it. Historically, a tool is a passive object. A hammer just sits there in your toolbox. It doesn't ping you at midnight to let you know that there's a nail that could be hammered.
Right. It doesn't have an opinion on your performance.
Exactly. It doesn't care. What we're seeing now with these AI systems is a shift to something, something active, agentic. It's often called algorithmic management. The software isn't just a passive organizer for your work anymore. It is actively trying to reshape your relationship with time itself. It sees every single moment, a quick break to go to the bathroom, a moment staring out the window, even just pausing to take a deep breath, as a data point, as wasted potential.
It's the colonization of your downtime. It's treating the human experience like a factory supply chain that just needs to be constantly tightened and made more efficient. And this isn't just, some abstract fear. It connects directly to the big economic shifts happening in the corporate world. The reports we've seen on right-sizing, they're brutal.
They are.
Companies are looking at that 40% efficiency gain, and they are not thinking, fantastic, let's give everyone Fridays off. They're thinking, okay, if AI helps a copywriter work 40% faster, we don't need 10 copywriters anymore. We only need 6.
Precisely. The fear that's lurking just behind that cheerful ping on Sarah's phone is existential. It's not just the desire to be a little better at your job. It's the fear that if you are not running at 100% fully optimized at all times, you're going to become obsolete.
You'll be the one who gets right-sized.
You'll be right-sized. The analysis is pretty clear that AI is making huge inroads into routine, white-collar work media, software development, data analysis, you name it. So the short-term reality for a lot of people is that you are now in a competition that you literally cannot win. It's a race against a machine that doesn't need to sleep, never calls in sick, and never has an off day.
Yeah.
And in a race like that, being human, needing to rest, needing a break, that's not a feature. It's a bug.
Exhaustion as a bug to be patched.
That is such a chilling way to put it.
Yeah.
But this is where the conversation, I think, starts to open up. Because I was digging through all this material. I found these incredible stories that show that show this technology being used in completely different ways. It's not all just Sarah's in their kitchens.
I want to tell you about this guy, Lao Chen. He's a floor supervisor, a real veteran, at a factory in Shenyang that makes components for high-speed rail. Now, Shenyang is important here. It's part of China's industrial heartland, all about heavy manufacturing. For Lao Chen, AI is not some digital ghost that haunts his laptop, tracking his keystrokes to make sure he's not stealing time.
So it's not micromanaging him.
Not at all. It's not checking if he's scrolling through social media. Instead, for him, the AI is this silent partner that's built right into the factory's heavy machinery and, get this, into the entire regional power grid.
Wow. Okay, so that's a huge shift in scale. We're moving from the quantified self to the quantified factory?
Exactly, the quantified factory. There's this one detailed account I read where Lao Chen is just watching the system in real time. The AI detects a small fluctuation in the city's power grid, a potential strain, and it automatically recalibrates the entire assembly line's energy use. It shifts the most energy-intensive processes to off-peak hours to help stabilize the whole city's infrastructure.
That's incredible.
It is. So while my friends in, London or New York are complaining about AI tools that track their deep work sessions until they feel like wrung-out sponges, Lao Chen's experience is it's on a different planet.
Yeah.
The technology is focused on the hard power of manufacturing output, on the physical reality of steel and electricity and logistics, not on the microscopic surveillance of one person's attention span.
That is a fundamental divergence.
And my takeaway from reading that was, there's a certain dignity in that model, a model where AI is being used to strengthen the literal bones of a nation, its infrastructure, instead of just squeezing more out of the individual cells, the employees. You're part of this big collective industrial project that doesn't really care about your personal optimization score. It just cares that the trains run on time for everybody.
You've just described a massive strategic split in how AI is being deployed. What you're talking about with Lao Chen, that's the core of what a lot of analyses on things like Made in China 2025 are all about. The focus isn't on the soft power of consumer apps and personal productivity. It's on the hard power of industrial efficiency. And there's a very, very practical reason for this that goes beyond just philosophy.
The demographics, right? The
Yep.
workforce issues.
It's all about the demographics. You look at reports from the Atlantic Council from basically everyone studying this, and you see that China is facing this massive demographic cliff, a shrinking working age population. So in that context, installing all these robots and AI systems, it's not primarily about replacing people because they're inefficient. It's because the people literally are not there anymore in the numbers they used to be. The stats are just staggering. They're installing something like 300,000 industrial robots a year compared to maybe 40,000 in the US.
So for a guy like Lao Chen, the AI isn't this existential threat to his job in the way it is for Sarah. It's actually a necessary tool to just keep the factory lights on.
It completely changes the dynamic. The technology becomes a non-negotiable part of maintaining national economic output. It's about securing the supply chain.
Yeah.
It's about national survival, not just about juicing the profit margin of a software company by burning out its staff. The AI becomes a tool for the system, not a judge of the person.
That feels like a key distinction. It feels less personal. Sarah is drowning because the AI is scrutinizing her choices, her time. Lao Chen is watching the AI scrutinize the power grid. It's external, not internal.
Now, we do have to be careful here. This kind of collective focus usually comes with a heavy dose of state control. It's not some kind of utopia. But it proves a really important point. The burnout model, the surveillance capitalism model that we're seeing in the West,
Yeah.
it's not inevitable. It's a choice. It's a policy choice.
And if it's a choice, well, that leads us directly to the idea of governance, of regulation. If we don't want to live in Sarah's world, we need to have some rules of the road. There's this fascinating paper from ArcCiv that we looked at, which draws a direct parallel to the Industrial Revolution.
It's a perfect analogy, really. The Industrial Revolution gave us the steam engine, mass production, unbelievable leaps in productivity. But without any rules, it also gave us child labor, factories that were death traps and robber barons. It took decades of struggle for labor laws, for antitrust regulations to sort of civilize that technology.
To put some guardrails on it.
Exactly. And right now, we are squarely in the Wild West phase of the AI revolution. We've invented this incredibly powerful steam engine, but we haven't invented a safety valve yet.
That concept of a safety valve or a guardrail is exactly what I want to talk about next, because there's another story, another narrative that shows what it can look like when those guardrails are actually built into the system from the start.
Okay.
I read about this woman, Elena. She's a policy curator who works for a state-led technology oversight bureau. And her job is, well, it's unlike anything I've ever heard of. She basically acts as a human circuit breaker for algorithms.
A human circuit breaker. What does that even mean in practice?
Well, the scenario they described was this. An AI had come up with a brilliant new logistics plan for her district. And this plan would have increased delivery efficiency by, guess what number?
Let me guess. 40%.
40%. There it is again. But, and this is the crucial part, in achieving that efficiency, the plan would have completely bankrupted thousands of small family-owned street stalls, you know, the little noodle shops and fruit stands that are the lifeblood of the neighborhood.
A social fabric.
The social fabric. And Elena's job, her whole mandate, which is rooted in this idea of state-led governance, was to throttle that efficiency. She literally hit the brakes on the algorithm. She said no, because the goal of her department wasn't to maximize profit at all costs. It was to prevent what they call civilizational decadence.
Wow. Civilizational decadence. This is a very heavy, very philosophical term for what sounds like a government agency.
It is, isn't it? It's the idea that a society can become so ruthlessly efficient that it just loses its human heartbeat. It loses its stability. And it's such a stark contrast to the kind of unregulated exploitation we see with, say, the gig economy in the West, where human beings are basically treated as disposable data points just to shave a few minutes off a delivery time.
So Elena is essentially the embodiment of that circuit breaker idea. In the typical U.S. model, we tend to worship at the altar of efficiency. The market is king. If the algorithm is faster and the little noodle shop can't keep up, well, that's just creative destruction, isn't it?
Too bad for the noodle shop.
Too bad. But Elena's world is asking a different set of questions. It's asking, faster for who exactly? And what cost to the community, to our social stability?
It's the radical idea that efficiency isn't the only metric that matters. But let's zoom out, because this plays out on a global scale. The sources we have compare these different legal approaches. Elena obviously fits into that state-driven model, but what are the other major frameworks out there?
So broadly speaking, you can see three distinct models taking shape. First, you've got the U.S. model. This is the one we're most familiar with.
Okay.
It's market-driven. It's sectoral, meaning different rules for different industries. And it relies heavily on companies regulating themselves. It's a light touch approach.
Let innovation flourish.
Let innovation flourish, and we'll clean up the mess later. This is the environment that creates the Sarah problem. There's no one in the system with the power to tell that app developer, hey, maybe stop sending notifications at 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, so that's model one. What about the EU?
Then you have the EU model, which is really embodied by their new AI Act. Their approach is risk-based. They try to categorize every use of AI. Is it an unacceptable risk, like social scoring by governments? Then it's banned outright. Is it high risk, like AI and medical devices or critical infrastructure? Then it gets regulated very, very strictly. The whole focus is on protecting fundamental individual rights and safety.
So in the EU, Elena might be there to protect the street vendors' data privacy, but maybe not their actual business from a more efficient competitor.
That's a good way to put it. The focus is different. And that brings us to the third model, which is Elena's model. We can call it the state-driven model, which you see most clearly in China. Here, the number one priority is social stability. So you get regulations like the deep synthesis provisions, which govern things like deepfakes. The state effectively reserves the right to say, we are going to throttle or ban anything that we think might cause social unrest, even if that thing is technically very efficient.
And that's the nuance that I think we often miss in the West. We hear the word control and we immediately think of censorship and a lack of freedom. But the other side of that same coin can be protection.
Exactly.
It can be a conscious choice to prioritize the community's cohesion over the algorithm's raw output.
It forces you to ask a really fundamental question about your society. Is the primary goal of our economy to be as fast and disruptive as possible? Or is it to be stable and livable? In the gig economy model, the human worker is the disposable part. In Elena's model is the algorithm that gets throttled if it threatens the human element.
And that question of what makes a society livable, that brings us to an even deeper level. It brings us to the philosophical divide. The Western approach, as we've discussed, is so focused on the individual. It's all about me, my rights, my data privacy, my personal productivity. But there's this entirely different ethical framework that's laid out in the research, which shifts the focus completely.
Yes, this is the critical shift from me to us. This framework isn't monolithic, of course. It draws on traditions from across Eastern ethics, from China, but also from India, the UAE, and the wider global South. And the common thread is this focus on holistic harmony, on interconnectedness, and on a sense of community responsibility.
And what's so compelling is that this isn't just, some abstract philosophical debate. It actually changes how people work, how they see their contribution to the world.
It changes their motivation.
It does. I want you to picture another person, a young researcher named Kenji. He works in a high-tech lab, and they're focused on patent conversion for next-generation power cells. In his world, in his cultural context, productivity isn't measured by his personal brand or how many followers he has or whether he's a thought leader on social media. His North Star, the thing that drives him, is collective survival.
That's a powerful motivator.
It's a huge motivator. I was reading a report about his team's work, and what was so striking was their obsession with what they call hard metrics, things like power consumption ratios, the efficiency of converting a lab theory into an industrial reality. They see AI as a crucial tool for national resilience. It's about ensuring the lights stay on for everyone, ensuring the country can compete in a future where resources are scarce.
Which is a world away from the Western corporate cycle of individual optimization.
A world away. That cycle pushes workers to use AI to become these superhuman versions of themselves. But it often just ends in this self-destructive loop of anxiety and burnout. Kenji's world, it seems. It must come with its own immense pressures, the pressure to contribute to the collective. But it also seems to shield him from that lonely narcissistic burnout of constantly trying to be the single most optimized person in the room. He's not in a race against his colleagues to see who can be the best human-AI hybrid. He's in a race to make sure his entire community has a future. It's a profound shift from me to us.
Kenji's story is the perfect real-world example of what some of the source material calls the sacred code approach to technology. And sacred here doesn't necessarily mean religious. It refers to a civic and moral obligation that's embedded in the act of creating technology. The driving question isn't, does this app maximize user engagement and profit? The question is, does the system serve the public good?
I saw a specific example of this in one of the sources that just blew my mind. It was about how an AI system was designed to handle a family that was struggling.
Yes, this one is a fantastic illustration of the ethical difference. So, In a typical Western bureaucratic system, think credit scores or social services. If an AI flags a family because they've missed some payments or their behavior seems irregular, that flag is almost always punitive. It triggers an audit, a penalty, maybe their benefits get cut. It assumes the person is a risk.
It's adversarial.
It's completely adversarial. But the example given in the research, which looked at these digital public goods initiatives in places like India and the UAE, showed a different logic. The AI correlated different data sets and realized that a local water pump in a certain village had failed. And because of that, it saw that a whole cluster of families in that area was suddenly facing nutritional challenges.
So it connected the dots. A broken pump means people are going hungry.
Precisely. And instead of flagging those families as a financial risk because maybe they were buying less food, the system did the opposite. It triggered a proactive visit from a social worker to go and provide support.
That's a monumental shift in thinking.
Yeah.
You're using the same underlying data. It's still surveillance, effectively. But the goal, the output, is care instead of punishment.
And this connects all the way back to Kenji in his lab working on power cells. One of the sources we looked at regarding geopolitical strategy made it very clear that the real bottlenecks of the future are going to be energy and compute. The West is currently obsessed with things like chip bans and export controls. Kenji's world is obsessed with self-reliance and just keeping the lights on.
So his personal work isn't about optimizing his morning routine. It's about the fact that his entire country's access to electricity in 10 years might depend on the work his lab is doing today. The stakes are just different.
They're fundamentally different. It puts the Sarah problem into a much broader perspective, doesn't it? The Western model seems geared toward creating these superhuman individuals who inevitably burn out. The Eastern model, for all its faults, seems to be aiming for a resilient society.
Even if the individuals within it are less optimized in that very narrow personal branding sense of the word.
Exactly. The individual might not have the most followers on LinkedIn, but the society as a whole is more robust against systemic shocks like an energy crisis or a supply chain collapse.
Okay, so let's try to pull all of these threads together. We've taken quite a journey here. We started in Sarah's kitchen with the tyranny of that constant, cheerful ping.
From the micro to the macro.
Yeah, and from there we went to the industrial factory floors of Shenyang, then to the regulatory offices where people like Elena are actively protecting street vendors, and finally to these research labs where the goal is collective survival.
It's a journey from the individual to the collective and from west to east.
And the common thread that runs through it all is this productivity trap. We've seen that while these amazing new tools can make us 40% more efficient, the machine itself has no off switch. It has no setting for enough. Sarah is the human cost of a system that only knows how to accelerate.
And it's important to say, the alternatives we've discussed, the models represented by Lao Chen, Elena, and Kenji, they're not perfect systems. They come with their own significant pressures and forms of control. But what they show us is that it's possible to use AI to strengthen the bones of a civilization, the infrastructure, the energy grid, the social fabric, instead of just using it to squeeze every last drop of productivity out of the individual.
It's like we've been given this incredibly powerful engine. In our personal and professional lives, it feels like we're using it to power a car that has no brakes. We're just going faster and faster towards a wall. These other models, they're using that same engine to build a train. Now, you can't steer the train yourself, which is a loss of individual autonomy, but it's designed to carry everyone forward together safely.
That's the choice, isn't it? We can continue to optimize ourselves as individuals right into oblivion, or we can start asking a different question. How can these tools help us build a better train?
As we're wrapping up, my mind keeps going back to Sarah. And honestly, it goes back to all of us who have that same instinct to check our phones the second we wake up in the morning.
We're all a little bit like Sarah.
We are. And I'm starting to think that maybe the most radical, most rebellious act in this new era isn't about winning the race or finding some new app to manage the other app.
No, it might be something much simpler. It might just be the realization that while the machine is brilliant at calculating potential, it has absolutely no capacity to calculate meaning.
They can tell you how to do 17 more things before you go to bed.
But it can never tell you why. And it can't tell you if the most meaningful thing you could do is just ignore it and go to sleep.
Exactly. The real choice we have to make isn't just about which regulatory model to adopt. It's about deciding, on a much deeper level, what and who this incredible technology is actually for. Is it for the optimization of the one, or is it for the survival of the many? That's the decision that's sitting right in front of us.
And we're the only ones who can make it. The algorithm can't.